Under the Icecap is an art and science collaboration between artist Dr. Nigel Hellier and scientist Dr. Mary Ann Lee from the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Studies at the University of Tasmania in Hobart, Australia. The project links scientific biologging data and GIS techniques with interactive acoustic cartography, with the aim of extending the conceptual and intuitive grasp of extremely abstract data by combining the discipline of visual arts, new media arts and music with environmental sciences, advanced computer data visualization and sonification. We continue to develop novel techniques for visualizing and sonifying the complex biologging data collected by southern elephant seals on their deep dives under the Antarctic ice shelves and during their long Southern Ocean transits. We are exploring new ways to make these data sets palpable, manifesting them as a series of experimental musical concerts and visual and sonified sound installations. I'm a sculptor and sound artist, and I work quite a lot with kind of art and science projects, collaborative things like that, and quite a strong focus on the environment and ecology. I think there's two things. I hope it's an interesting kind of cultural experience. I hope the music's like good music and that people have a good time and that they enjoy the way we visualize the data. And I mean, the actual images are very, very beautiful, and the graphical scores that we've made are really very interesting. The concept came about because we're working with these very large, complex data sets collected by elephant seals diving under Antarctic ice, and kind of looking at them and looking at how scientists deal with them, charting them, visualizing them, using kind of MATLAB and things like that to kind of figure out what the hell's going on and make a picture of the world. I just had a hunch that there were certain people who are trained or whose discipline is actually to deal with very, very complex variables in real time and kind of communicate between one another at the same time. They're called musicians.
We hoped that musicians who were quite used to responding to quite complex data streams in the form of music might be able to perhaps glean something from the information that we as scientists weren't so easily able to see using the visualization software that we use. The musicians seemed to respond well to the data that we put in front of them, which was quite complex, and it was also the first time they'd seen it, so I think we were quite happy the way that they were able to respond to the data.
The musicians are just fantastic, and they really kind of got into it in a very kind of serious way, but it was kind of a playful the way they worked with it. And I think the audience was rapt. We had a great Q&A session afterwards with some intelligent questions. Obviously people were really engaged in it, and I think it's brought out a whole bunch of possibilities for the future. So I'm happy.
We began working with a group of gifted improvisation musicians from the Tasmanian Conservatorium of Music, on the premise that musical training provides a unique skill set, dynamic response, collaborative action, and strong interpretive abilities. Our principal challenge was how to visualize and transact data in such a way that it could be translated into music, not digitally, but by live performers. Whilst musical interpretations of graphical scores are synonymous with modernism, and while sonification goes hand in hand with the history of computer music, our experiment was with the effectiveness of translating massive data sets into animated visualizations and hence to real-time musical responses. We were seeking a utility for science and an effect for culture. Firstly, some background information about the species and the environment that generates our source data. The southern elephant seal is the largest pinniped and exhibits strong sexual dimorphism, the male being significantly larger than the female. Males have been recorded to weigh up to 4,000 kilograms with a length of 6.85 meters. The smaller females forage mainly in the pelagic zone, whilst the males will forage in both pelagic and benthic zones, diving to depths of up to 2,000 meters, with the ability to remain submerged for 2 hours. There are three main subpopulations: the South Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the sub-Antarctic islands of the Pacific Ocean. Biologging devices are attached once the animal has molted, and with luck can remain in situ for up to a year. The device transmits a range of data to a satellite each time the seal surfaces, providing information about location, temperature, salinity, pH and other water qualities. Because of their capacity to dive deep in water columns and the habit of foraging under the Antarctic ice shelves, southern elephant seals have provided information otherwise unobtainable regarding the deep water formation associated with the production of ocean currents and sea ice formation, both vital indicators of global climate change. For the first of the Vox on the Rocks concert series, we grouped our datasets into three movements. In the first movement, we created animated graphical scores that displayed the track of a single animal, shown as 4 sets of paired variables. The second movement represented 2 animals with 2 sets of paired variables, and the third movement 4 animals with 1 set of paired variables. The animated graphical scores were synchronized with an animated 3-dimensional underwater mapscape representing the seal dives and transit tracks. The 4 performers were free to follow both data flows simultaneously. In the first movement, each instrument was assigned a set of variables collected by a single seal. For instance, piano to surface wind speed, saxophone to depth and salinity, double bass to depth and temperature, and guitar to ocean bottom and bottom density. In the second movement, each of the 2 animals has 2 instruments assigned to its data, and thus in the third movement, each seal was followed by a single instrument, our attention being drawn to the points in the data flow where the seals intersected geospatially, and the potential for musical interpretation to likewise correspond. From a metaphorical perspective, the relationship that evolved between the 4 improvisation musicians during their first encounter with this data environment forges strong parallels with the situation of the animals foraging in the harsh underwater world of the ice shelf. In both cases, information has to be processed instantly and a response generated on the fly. However, this is not simply a response to the perceived external environment, but also builds a network of communications within the group, developing a form of entrainment, establishing a collective response to the unknown, inventing a methodology that maps around the environment. Naturally, from a strictly scientific perspective, a valid criticism can be raised concerning the level of ambiguity and ambivalence of any intuitive response to such graphical scores and 3D mappings, especially when they are an initial response generated instantaneously to be simultaneously negotiated within an ensemble. However, even the data itself is an abstract, generic and scant description of the vast and complex reality of the living environment, not to mention the mediation of statistical tools and representational techniques that are employed to give meaning during data analysis. The Vox on the Rocks concert series continued throughout the year of 2012, iterating our hunch that the skills and perceptions of the musicians placed them in a good position to interact with the complex stream of real-time information, and that through a process of iteration we hope to locate a sweet spot connecting the traditional scientific approach with a creative sensibility, effectively opening up an enormous range of human inquiry into the natural world to a wider public. In the current phase of research, Under the Icecap aims to illuminate the fundamental connection between human economies and planetary dynamics, embodied in a cultural rather than statistical form. The byline for the Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies is Turning Nature into Knowledge. The Under the Icecap project supplies a second line, Turning Knowledge into Culture, encapsulating a powerful art and science synthesis and simultaneously raising the expectation, but also the risk of the endeavour. The primary aim is to produce a creative work which is compelling and affective, but is at the same time a work of scientific utility. A tall order perhaps, but one worth striving for. The key focus is the relationship of the environmental knowledge generated from Antarctic biologging data with the anthropogenic changes in the biosphere. Whilst the philosophical aims and direction of Under the Icecap remain consistent with its earlier manifestations, in fact the concert series, the aesthetic scope, methodology and modality of the proposed outcomes have been radically expanded into a multimodal delivery that encompass sound sculpture, installation, animated GIS mapping projections, and significant live performance components. The performative elements are envisaged as an experimental chamber opera with both instrumental and vocal elements set against data sonifications and ambient Antarctic recordings. Media derived from the performance events will be reincorporated into the installation and distributed via web and broadcast domains. Other aesthetic components will include 3D dynamically spatialized audio, an address of geophony, biophony, and anthrophony, and the performance aspects that incorporate early data-controlled music machines operated by punch paper graphical scores derived from biologging and other data. Science is constrained by objectivity and impartiality, whilst perhaps art is constrained by subjectivity and partiality. Ironically, both disciplines experience similar difficulties in establishing an effective communication with either the public at large or the structures of governance and policy. The Under the Icecap core team is committed to exploring the environment and social and political issues that are currently transforming our biosphere, and are experimenting with radical means of expressing complex scientific research as cultural works that can render this knowledge into a broader cultural discourse.